ES Audio.
Hello and welcome to Lawrence Delalio's Rugby Podcast. Now, you probably noticed that I'm not Lawrence. He's not here. He's probably on a beach somewhere or skiing somewhere. We don't quite know really, but I'm Sarra Elgan anyway, and I'll be keeping his seat warm for 1 week only. And keeping me company this week is a stellar lineup of guests ready to hopefully chat about all the weekend's rugby action. First up, back from his trip to Antigua to cover the cricket. Nice work if you can get it. It's Evening Standard sports journalist, Will Macpherson. Hi, Will.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, normally it's me getting some stick for not turning up to this podcast, but it's not actually my name in the title of the podcast.
I know, what's all that about?
Only Lawrence could pull this one off, but
100%. 100%. Well, I'm kind of glad he's not here because it gives me a chance to speak to you guys anyway. Also a very familiar and sometimes friendly face, depending on what sort of mood he's in, is former Leicester, England and Lions legend, Mr. Ben Kay. I don't think I've ever introduced you as a legend before, Ben.
Hi, Lawrence. How are you? Nice. I like what you've done with your hair. Thrown it out for a change.
It's going to be a long podcast.
It's going to be very long. So
yeah, I know. I'm bracing myself. And last but not least, from the Club Podcast, 2 words, 4 quarters. It's a very happy Harlequins fan, I would have thought, after the weekend. It's Michael Woods. Hey, Michael.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. Spot the pro, though. Spot the pro at podcasting with a mic in front of his face.
It's usually us that get shown up by these people coming on. We have guests on and they come with all these big fancy headsets. I think I had to nick these headphones from school as well, so I better not tell them.
Well, you're looking good. You're looking like the pro.
Like you're gaming.
Yeah, not much of a gamer at all. Useless those PlayStations.
Yeah, you look good anyway. It's looking good. Well, you probably had a busy weekend. Have you? Do you cover the Women's Cricket World Cup final and keeping across all the rugby action?
Technically, I was off this weekend, but
Okay.
I was sort of due a bit of family time after 3 weeks away. But I spent most of the weekend watching sport, men and women, international and domestic. It was actually a really good weekend of sport. Enjoyed it. The England women in the cricket didn't go so well. That was kind of predictable. Australia are unbelievable. But I really enjoyed Women's Six Nations this weekend and the Premiership too.
Good. Okay. And Benny, you've been here then everywhere this week. You were moaning about it on Tuesday when I saw you. You were moaning. What have you've done the miles?
I've done the miles.
And I delivered
Bristol, Cardiff, Manchester, Matlock, Stratford. It's nice to sleep in my own bed. The night before, I slept in a kid's bunk bed because that's the sort of rock and roll lifestyle I lead. There wasn't a kid in there, I should point out. It was me, but I didn't just gate crash someone's house.
I'm not feeling sorry for you anyway, given that you had a week in the Alps before it. It's your wife we should be feeling sorry for. 4 kids and you've not been there for 2 weeks.
You should always feel sorry for my wife, Sarah. You know that.
Yeah, there are many reasons why. But good to see you all. And Michael, we'll talk a little bit about your podcast a bit later. But have you recovered from the celebrations of winning the podcast awards last week? Tell us about that honour.
Yeah, just about. Will and I had a few beers yesterday to celebrate. Obviously, a little win down at the Brentford Stadium yesterday as well. So yeah, it's been a bit of a long weekend for us. And also I'm not at work this week, seeing as we're on school holidays. So a few more celebrations than over the next couple of days, I should imagine. Yeah,
massive congratulations. We'll talk more about that later on, because I think we should probably start now, shouldn't we, with the results from the weekend's action. And Benny, you were at Sale, Saracens, on Friday night. Another win for Saracens, but it wasn't all play stadium for them really, was it?
Well, no, but they do just look comfortable at being able to get the wins in any way they can. And you know, at no point really did you sort of feel, oh, Saracens aren't going to win this. You just sort of feel with their history and the players they've got and being able to sort of, you know, people forget, you look back on championship winning teams and you think that every game they were brilliant and they're not. It never happens like that. And you forget about the sort of poorer performances when they actually get the wins, which are probably the most important to becoming champions in the end.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've got a feeling, I don't know if you feel the same, that Mark McCall's men, they're almost just going about their business slightly under the radar this season, aren't they? Which is ominous, I suppose, for everyone else.
Yeah, it's definitely ominous. They had their year or kind of half year away in the championship. And actually, the next few weeks will be quite interesting because some of their rivals have kind of sapping matches in Europe to play. Sarries are obviously in Europe, they're in the Challenge Cup rather than Champions Cup, and I think that'll be interesting to see what effect that has on them. I think we're pretty certain they're going to make the playoffs now. I think there's no doubt about that. They're probably going to get a home semi, but But if they're kind of fresh and firing towards the back end of the season, having not been sort of had so much taken out of them by Europe, then they could be a real force, I think. And they just know how to win these knockout games as well.
Yeah, you're nodding there, Michael. That's not good to hear, right, for a Harlequins fan?
Every single week, whenever Sarries are playing, you're always checking the results and just hoping they're going to slip up. And you think Sale away on a Friday night, nobody wants to go and play Sale. They're, a horrible bunch of lads, but they just seem to just grind out results. They always do. They just keep churning out wins, and just desperate. Even when they went away to, went to the Spurs Stadium, didn't they? Had the big game against Bristol, and you think Bristol was somehow going to snatch something from the game, and then it always ends up that Sarries just keep grinding out these results and keeping us in third, unfortunately.
Michael, you must be more worried about the fact that your team are so high up the table this year. You sort of made that late charge last year and got on a run, and you're almost a bit too comfortable now, aren't you?
A little bit. Yeah, it's weird. We just came from nowhere last year, and I think at any stage last year, no one would have fancied us in the playoffs. I still think that's probably the case, but what are the chances of us recreating a Bristol in that sort of ridiculous semi-final down there? The miracle of Bristol. I don't think that's going to be recreated. We'd have to go away to Sarries, and we'd have to go away to Leicester if we're going to have any chance of making it to the big dance again. But the way we're tracking, we'll see how the end of the season goes. And if we're playing our best rugby, I'm not sure there are many teams that will be that happy about coming up against us.
Now, they often wonder, Ben, for players, is it like it's tougher, right, defending a title almost than it is to chase one? Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think the league structure now changes that a little bit. So when you used to be gunning all out for first place, that changed it. But the fact that other teams are ahead of Harlequins, you sort of that gives Harlequins that, well, we're not the best team, and that lack of pressure of being the top dogs, and that'll be interesting for Leicester as well, because they're obviously qualified now. It'd be a miracle if they don't get a home semi-final, but they almost, I think Europe's going to be really big for them. It not just in terms of competing for it, but keeping that momentum going, because it would be very easy, having qualified with a few weeks to spare, to how you keep that intensity in training and everything else, and then try and raise yourself again for when the playoffs come would be a bit difficult. So I think Europe will be really important to Steve Borthwick. Some people saying, will they take Europe full on, or will they concentrate on the Premiership and making sure that they'll absolutely take it full on, because players need that you get on a winning run, you get on a losing run, and you have to keep that momentum and intensity. Yeah,
it's a really exciting part of the season. Now, Sale-wise, though, they did get, didn't they, the losing bonus point in the end, Will, and we know how crucial they can be come the end of the season, especially how tight this table is this term.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had Manu come off the bench and put in an absolutely enormous hit, as he likes to, pretty much immediately, which is encouraging signs for them. I also thought Luke James at the end of that game, what an effort, that kind of mazy run. And then they got the bonus point. I think they're still pretty tidy forwards. They're going to lose some of those South African guys. I think the expectation is that might be confirmed this week. So it might be a kind of a bit of a last few weeks for that team together as it is, and I reckon they're a pretty dangerous side.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually, because I read those reports, because obviously AJ McGinty's gone, isn't he? We know he's going, and then you've got the Clark. Faf is rumoured to be going as well. Is it to Japan? I read. I think today, and the Jaeger to the Stormers. They're going to be massive losses for them next season.
They've got some incoming traffic as well, haven't they? Johnny Hill's coming up from Exeter and stuff. So they just might be quite a different looking side as when for next term. But I think, as I said, I think it's kind of a last few weeks as a group, and then the team kind of disbands. But I think that's what happens when you bring quite a disparate group of players together. They've got a lot of overseas players, a lot of South Africans particularly, is a kind of reputation, and I think that can tend to happen, that these teams break up at once, and obviously the cap is quite hard work to stay inside of these days as well too.
I think they'll change their style of play, because you look at who is coming in, and they'll, I don't think they'll lose all of them. I'm just speculating. I don't know anything at all, but I reckon they might be keen to keep the Dupree brothers, in particular Dan and Jean-Luc, who could fit into the style of play. They're not doing it at the moment. We saw Dan on Friday night sort of heading into contact at every single available option, but both of them can offload. And then you sort of partner that with a bit more sort of free flowing in the likes of Johnny Hill as a second row compared to, some of the other guys they've got at the moment. George Ford's going to be massive for them pulling the strings. He's an on-field coach. Leicester will be really sad to lose him because of his ability to control things and bring the best out of other players around him. And then you add in someone like Tom O'Flaherty, who one of the hardest working wings in the Premiership and is really, really good, makes a load of meters, loads of line breaks. I think they're going to bolt on stuff to their style of play, which they need to, because on Friday night, it's been the same all season. It's been evident they haven't got that. They'll match anyone physically, but they haven't got the cut and thrust to be able to break teams with some individual brilliance and some great rugby ability at the moment.
That's going to take some time, though, isn't it, to change your style of play? Are we going to see like them having to transition, or like, I don't know, next season, given the players that are coming in and the players that are going?
I think what I think will happen, and it's a little bit like when Alex Sanderson first got there, is I think you'll see an immediate uplift as the players love playing that style of rugby, and having Fordy there pulling the strings will absolutely enable that and help that. But they then might plateau off, and so it might be that we're all raving about them at the beginning of next season, saying, these are the team to beat, they're the potential champions, and then people will start to work it out a little bit, and that's the hard bit for Alex, is how you take it again to the next level. Okay,
let's move on then to Northampton and Bristol. And Saints maintaining their playoff charge. And it was fast, wasn't it? It was fast and furious. It was exhausting, the opening 40 minutes. Michael, did you see it?
I've watched glimpses of it, and I've read a few bits about Northampton's midfield just being as good as they have been all season and really sort of putting a marker down on that chase for the top four. I know that we've got to play them, I think, away at Franklin's Gardens in a couple of weeks on that Friday night, so that should be a pretty big clash as well.
Brutal run in. Sorry, you've got a tough run in.
Yeah, we've got Gloucester, Leicester,
Exeter.
and Exeter as well.
Yeah.
Exeter away. Yeah, we're going to have a tough few weeks. We've got obviously a bit of the European Cup rugby in between then and now as well. So it's going to be a tough.
You haven't got anyone very good in Europe.
No, that's true. We're not playing top of the 14, are we? We're playing someone right down the bottom. But yeah, at least it'll be sunny down there on the south coast of Montpellier. I'm looking forward to a couple of glasses of rosé next weekend.
You going out?
Yeah, I'm going out. Yeah, I missed out on Castra because of everything that sort of kicked off and that storm of it. So yeah, I'm not missing out this weekend, that's for sure.
Are you going out, Benny? Where are you this weekend?
No, I am in Connaught.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm in Paris, but I'm not in Paris. I'm in a broom cupboard in Stratford.
Use your imagination. I find Northampton quite intriguing. I find them quite interesting because they obviously had that blip, didn't they, where they lost, was it like 3 or 4 games on the bounce, but they seem to have turned that corner again now, and it's just that consistency, isn't it, that they're lacking? Because when they're good, they're really good.
They're great fun to watch. For all the backline brilliance on the weekend, my favourite drive they scored with Lewis Ludlam's unbelievable leg drive, and I just feel like he is a completely transformed player. He's such an improved player. I can see why he's back in the mix with England. He's actually excellent in that game at Murrayfield at the start of the Six Nations, and he seems like such an influential player for them. And with Laws back as well and bigger post Six Nations, they look like quite a handful over in the next few weeks, I reckon.
I love Dan Biggar. He's one of my favourite players. He's such a gent.
He's a diamond. He's one of those players, isn't he, that you watch him playing, you think, oh, I hate him.
I like him.
He's so gobby, he's always in the rev. And then you meet him and he takes you back because he's so nice. Yeah. Though he might need to just work on bending at the hips a bit in the tackle, because there were a couple last week where he might have paid the price. And the last thing Saints need for the run-in is losing him for a couple of weeks with a high shot. So I think he maybe got away with a little bit less than he should have done at the weekend.
Yeah, Pat Lam wasn't happy, was he? Like post-match, he was talking about.
That's not like Pat, is it?
Talking about the officiating. Where do we stand, gents, on coaches? I'm not going to say moaning, but questioning kind of decisions, refereeing decisions. Where do we stand on that?
I think rugby should take a bit of a lead on this and develop a relationship between the directors of rugby and the referees, where the referees almost say it's okay to sort of criticize individual decisions. But, I hate the whole, you're not allowed to say anything because it's just, let's sweep it under the carpet. If coaches are upset and when we're covering the games, we have this vicious touchline reporter called Sarra Elgan Lawrence, and she just goads them into trying to say it all the time. But the fans want to know what the coaches are thinking. Now, there's a line that you can't cross, but we can't just turn our backs on sort of controversial decisions. And, the referees, occasionally they'll hold their hands up and say, yeah, I made a mistake. They'll do it on the pitch, and they're human. But I think that would, the fans don't like it just being ignored at all. And I think there's probably a conversation to be had with Prem Rugby, the RFU, the clubs themselves, and the referees about how they could manage that so that we're not just saying I can't say anything, because we all know what they're thinking when they say I can't say anything. Yeah,
and it makes they're only human, aren't they? You're saying that the officials are only human, like so are the coaches. Like what do you think? Well, Michael, what's your take on it?
I think it's important to see personalities in the game. We always say that, and if the coach has got an opinion, and there's a coach, from my club particularly, if Nick Evans or Adam Jones or Tabai Matson, who's been brilliant this year, if he's got something to say and he's got an opinion on something that is slightly controversial, as a fan, I want to hear it. And you guys on BT Sport do such a brilliant job of then, in the game, having those chats sort of midway through the first half, getting their opinion on how the game's going, what are you seeing this, what are you seeing there, how are you feeling at scrum time. But then if they've got something to say on an officiating decision, we see it all the time now, and everyone's got an opinion on it. And some of the coaches in the league are the best place to give their opinion. So if they've got one, I personally would like to hear it rather than us sort of, like Ben says, brush under the carpet.
Bristol, though, gosh, they're having a tough old season, Will, aren't they? I mean, to say it's not been a good season for them is probably an understatement. And now they've got a potential salary cap compliance issue, which they have to deal with. I think it's fair to say this isn't the kind of season that the Bears fans were expecting.
No, and especially when you consider how different the picture looked a year ago. Bristol Bulls been mentioned. Obviously, they were in such a good position in that game, and then ended up not getting anything out of last season. They're in a. We were talking about Sale players moving on. They're in a similar situation, but it seems like it's being it's really forced upon them, and they're going to lose a lot of that team. But we've a lot of people. It's kind of, even as a neutral, it's been quite an easy team to fall in love with. I'd say they've been really fun to watch. It kind of started last year, I suppose, when they had Maylands and Earl. Beneficiaries of the salary
good for them.
Harrison situation. Maylands and Earl were wonderful loan signings, and then they left, and they're even just the influence of those two, they haven't been quite as good this year, and now they're going to lose plenty more for next season. So yeah, Pat Lamb's got a job on his hands, I think.
Yeah, he has indeed. Okay, Exeter Bath then. Another substantial defeat for Bath at Sandy Park, but things, to be fair, were looking good in those early stages. They showed some attacking flair in that opening 40, Benny.
It's so difficult to understand why Bath are struggling so much this year, because they have got good players. Yeah, they've had a lot of injuries, but so have other clubs as well. They have a back line that, if they can keep them together, is young and uber talented. And that's going to be their big challenge, I guess. There'll be a lot of loyalty there always is from kids that have come up through an academy system. There's a couple that have got dads that have done brilliant things in the Bath shirt before, but people will come knocking for them because they are huge talents, and if they can't see that it's going somewhere. So I think they probably can't wait to get to the end of the season and see what Johan Graham can do Van Graham, can do at the end of the season, because or in pre-season. One thing that he probably will be very good at, having met him and spoken to him, he is a big, like, make the club a family and bring everyone closer together. And you just get the impression with Bath that there's been a little bit of, people not happy with the situation and things. And you almost just need a clean slate and a fresh start, and someone coming in and just with a different voice that's gonna say, right, right off the last couple of years, this is where we start. And, the way Steve Borthwick's done it with Leicester, and I think that probably the Bath fans will look at that and say, look where they were 2 years ago, 18 months ago, and look where they are now. It is possible as long as you have the right leader in place. And, they'll all be hoping that Johan van Graan's that man.
And Exeter, they did go on to win, and I think they scored 6 tries, didn't they, at the end? Michael, best word to describe Exeter this season?
Wow.
Inconsistent.
Yeah, just still dangerous. I think they're a little bit like your Northamptons and New Gloucesters. We've sort of had, I sort of say this from sort of the Harlequins perspective, we've sort of had an eye on them, sort of in the back of your head across the year. But we know, much like Saracens, they've been there year in, year out with a brilliant coaching group. Rob Baxter, I still think, is one of the best coaches in the league. And then when they get all those players back, obviously they've missed loads of them during the international periods. And I think Ben made a really good point as well. They've just got some really, really smart, intelligent, battle-hardened Premiership players. The likes of Tom O'Flaherty, those sorts of players, Joe Simmons. I don't want to go to Sandy Park in a few weeks and play a full-strength exercise, that's for sure.
I think it might be. Steve, let's move on then, shall we? To Worcester, Newcastle, Steve Diamond. Oh, if I could do a post-match
pathetic, Sarah.
If I could do a post-match interview with Steve Diamond every week, I'd be more than happy. Yeah, well, pathetic. And what was the other word you used to describe the performance? Disgraceful.
Yeah.
How would you describe it, Will?
Well, it was good that they were on the park this week. It was my first point. I mean, there was no post-match interview to be done last week because there wasn't a game. It was good, they played, which is something. That's there's no relegation this season, but that, and then their Bath have had a tough year as well, but they'd be right down there if there was. And that's quite a heavy home defeat to a team who are also not exactly lighting up the league in Newcastle. So Dimes is kind of, I think when he was appointed at Worcester, everyone was pretty intrigued by that and kind of felt like this is the man for that job. But maybe he's realising the scale of the task on his hands at this stage, I reckon.
Yeah, he's always kind of refreshingly honest. But I tell you what, I wouldn't want to be those Warriors going back into training this week.
I just wonder whether he might not be as bad as sometimes. Having had that sort of explosion on telly, they'll all have been panicking all day on Sunday, won't they? And then sort of, maybe he'll come in and just be a little bit, almost shock them by being nice and saying, right, let's put this right. Sometimes my experience of the old hairdryer coaches was that the worst thing was you never quite knew. So you'd come in thinking, oh yeah, we played all right, and then you get the full treatment and get your feet back on the ground. So
you have no use for a hairdryer. You've had no use for a hairdryer well, since 18.
That's what got rid of it. I put it on the wrong setting. So yeah, look, it will be really interesting. It'd be also interesting what he does recruitment wise in there now. He'll have had a chance to have a look at, I don't know the contract situation of their players and stuff, but he'll have had a look, and you sort of get the impression with Dimes, what he's looking for. He's looking for tough people that never give up. And so it'll be really interesting whether he's highlighted some of those as, weaker characters that need to be playing in a side that's winning all the time. And whether the other thing that he's always been quite good at is finding players that maybe other clubs don't want anymore for whatever reason and bringing them in and trying to get the best out of them. But it's going to be fascinating seeing how that relationship goes.
On Newcastle as well, as Will said, they've not been lighting up the league. But I suppose for Dean Richards, he'd probably be like, why can't we do this every week? Because again, you just see glimpses, don't you, with the Falcons, but they just can't do it week in, week out for 80 minutes.
What was one of the reasons why what Steve Diamond said rang so true was what Newcastle haven't been doing all season is getting any sort of they'd go through phase after phase after phase and not go anywhere, and it looked like they had a cheat code on the weekend. They were winning every collision. It almost looked really easy for them, which I guess is why Steve Diamond was so upset. But the person we should mention around Newcastle is George McGuigan, who is on absolute fire at the moment. I think we worked out last week he's got about I think it's got something like nearly 15% of their meters made and line breaks and things.
When you say we, do you mean like the statisticians at BT, or do you mean you?
Oh, me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I measured. I got my tape measure out on my computer and measured every single one of them. So, okay. But look, he's on fire, and it's really good to see actually, because he didn't, you know, it was a few people expecting big things of him when he joined Leicester, and it didn't really go his way, and it probably was a lot down to the timing of that, and when Leicester weren't playing that well, but he just looks to be loving the sport at the moment, and he's got a bit of everything. Power, you know, we see him scoring off the driving mauls and breaking out, but he runs such intelligent lines, and he's a powerful individual that he's always going to make those breaks.
Okay, London Irish Harlequins, Michael, I reckon we saw all that was good about the game in that opening 40 minutes yesterday. It was just like entertainment, wasn't it, from both sides? It was so good to watch.
Maybe not for the first sort of 7 or 8 minutes, but yeah, after that, we were pretty good. We got our hands on the ball. We started, and we scored 2 tries without really firing a shot. We had 2 big set piece moves that, you know, it hasn't been a real standout characteristic of our performances in our game this year. So that was really pleasing to see. And then, yeah, everything just seemed to sort of click. You know, the boys were back, Marcus, Marla, Dombrandt. It makes such a difference having guys like that back in the side. And unfortunately, I think for Irish, they came up against a side that was probably ready to start ticking, because even in the period over Six Nations, we've been good and we've been winning. But yesterday, everything sort of came together in a really, really pleasing way, especially because it was a Sunday against a side who we had already lost to this year, and the bonus point was already wrapped up before half time. And then from there, it's just a case of getting the job done, which we ended up doing really nicely.
Yeah,
they also bombed 6 tries.
Yeah, well, I'm going to hold my hands up here. I hope Ollie Hassel-Collins isn't listening to this, because for some reason I was getting really stuck into him on the near side. Caden Murley was not defending him at the start. Then Luke Northmore took a knock. They sort of swapped wings, and Hassel-Collins dropped one. Then they dropped another one. Tizard sort of knocked one out of Sinti's hands going over the line, and then 2 floated passes that went over Hassel-Collins' head as well. Yeah, they gave up a few London Irish, but you know, when it's your day, I suppose. I
mean, I don't know how tall you are, Michael, but he's quite a big bloke.
I'm 6'5", so I've probably got a couple of inches just about on him. But
I think you might have you. But okay.
I think length of the field, he might just nab me for pace.
Yeah, I think you might. Well, they were just clinical, weren't they, Quins? I think in that first half alone, there were like 5 entries into the 22, and I think they scored off 4 of them. I mean, that was the main difference, really, wasn't it? That was like the story of the game, I guess.
Yeah, and we're not always hyper-clinical. I mean, we have a lot of attempts. Me and Will used to start at the time. We have a lot of attempts on goal. We have loads of ball, but a lot of the time it's one pass too many, just because that's the sort of brand and style of rugby we play. We end up almost giving one too many passes at times, but then when it works, we all sit there and chat about how brilliant it is. But yeah, we were really clinical yesterday. And even we scored when yellow card merchant Danny Kerr off for his fifth card of the year. We even scored when he was off the pitch as well. So no, it was good. We were singing yesterday, actually filling me with a little bit of confidence going into this weekend as well.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear. Well, Irish, they've been scoring some great tries. Their attack has been great this season, but it just wasn't working for them, was it, yesterday for whatever reason?
Michael sort of summed it up with the talk about Ollie Hassel-Collins. They're just a bit profligate, weren't they? And they've been such a fun team to watch for the last year, I suppose now. 33 all has become a kind of standard result in Brentford, which is weird. And what's strange is they were really ticking a couple of weeks ago, building up to these. They've had these 2 big days in West London over the last 2 weekends. They had Saints for their Paddy's Day party, and then they had the West London derby against Quins, and both games actually they've been blown away a little bit. The club are doing a lot right. The club look great from those 2 games. They've had decent crowds. And are starting to feel at home back in West London, I think. But the team who were going so nicely have just misfired a little bit, which is a shame. And in such a congested league, don't know whether they could afford those 2 results given where they were tracking before that.
Do you know, I'm getting really frustrated in interviews because I keep on asking, about the run-in and the teams that like they've got left to play. And genuinely, the DORs are laughing at my questions, not for the first time, but like they're literally laughing at my question because they're like, oh, we don't look forward, we don't look to the future. Ben, please tell me I'm not going mental, because surely like the coaches and the players, they have to look, don't they, at the run-ins and who they've got next and what the other teams are doing at this stage of the season?
Yeah, so all through the season, a DOR's job, really, if you look at probably the difference between a DOR and a head coach, a DOR's job is to make sure that you're still peaking at the right stage of the season at the back end of the year. The head coach is maybe more focused on winning on Saturday, and together they come up with the sort of the plan for that. But they plan the season all through, and yes, you have to adapt it as you go along because you lose bodies. But to be fair, they probably are not saying anything to the players bar next week. The players aren't clever enough to sort of worry about what's happening in 2 weeks' time. But well, you don't want to overload them with information. You don't want them to take their foot off the gas, because whatever you do, whatever your planning is, you still want whoever's on the pitch to go full bore, and you don't want to think that you're taking this week easy. I don't think come the end of the season you do take the weeks easy. That sort of happens earlier on in the season, where you might make some rotations in your squad. This stage of the season, unless there's a game that really you think you can afford to, you want to be getting everyone up at top speed. And that whole thing about worrying that someone might get injured, I think the coaches that do that aren't usually very successful. I think the ones that tend to, in my experience, that tend to be successful are the ones that can adapt if someone does get injured. And the key, and certain teams have done it well during this season, and actually it's probably the biggest thing that Steve Borthwick's brought to Leicester, is giving enough time to those people that might be needed at the business end of the season if there's an injury, so that it's not a big drop off. And the strength and depth of the squad is huge at this stage of the season, and making sure that anyone that might have to come in not only is up to speed as an individual, but knows the system, knows all the players well enough that it's not a huge drop off if you lose one of your star players.
Okay, so if we're saying that Leicester obviously are, if we're saying Leicester, Sarries, and probably Quins now are just safe in that top four.
I'd have thought so, yeah.
Okay, so who's getting that fourth spot? Because I'm looking at the table here, and you've potentially got like 6 teams that can still make it. Like Wasps even now, I guess, 2. So anyway, yeah, who are you going for the full spot? We'll start with Will.
They're in 4th place at the moment. They've played 21 games, which is as many as anyone in the league. But I am going to go Exeter because they know what they're doing. They looked hot on Saturday, and I quite fancy that they'll just now consolidate that position. There's teams around them with games in hand. Northampton look really good as well, but I fancy that they're going to get a bit between their teeth and sort of steer the ship and just do enough over the next few weeks.
Michael?
Yeah, I think I'm the same as Will. I think you look at the teams around Exeter, Northampton, Sale, Gloucester, they haven't got that Premiership pedigree at the back end of the season that I think that Chiefs setup have. Might be a little bit of a boring answer, but I think Exeter will still be there at season's end. Okay, Benny?
Yeah, but on Friday, I was pretty sure it was going to be Gloucester, and then they went and lost because the table that we're all looking at the moment, they haven't been awarded their points for the Worcester game, but they'll definitely get 4. They might very well get 5, and they've still got a game in hand on Exeter as well. They've been winning games because of the strength of their forward pack, added to what we've known they can do in the past. And they had such confidence in their driving wall. So I'm sort of coming round towards Exeter, but they're not the side they were. They don't have that fear factor that every time they get into your 5-metre zone, they're going to come away with a try. And people thought they were boring. They weren't. They were playing good rugby to get themselves into that position. But then they'd always, so when on the highlights, you'd always see someone going over the line. But once they got to that area of the pitch, they would, convert the opportunity almost twice as much as anyone else. So, and they haven't got that. So that'll be I wouldn't at all make them favourites to or anywhere near favourites to lift the title. They might prove me wrong. I think they might get in, but just to be different from everyone else. Northampton have come into the mix as well, but I'll just stick with Gloucester.
Okay. Gloucester?
I don't know, yeah.
Okay.
Or Northampton. But just not Exeter, because then it'll be really boring. Who do you think, Sarah? Who do you think?
I don't know. I was like you. I was thinking Gloucester as well till this weekend, to be fair. But yeah, I don't know. My predictions are always rubbish. Right. Okay. Time for us to choose the outstanding player from the weekend. I'm going to leave you guys just like talk amongst yourself. Michael, I'm taking that you're going to choose a Quinn.
I've got two actually. The two Hughes, Jones and Tizard.
Both Quins. Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty. Every time I watch you Tizard play, and I'm sure Ben is a former England second row, you're probably looking at him thinking he's going to be a pretty serious player. Well, I'm absolutely devastated that he's going at the end of the year, especially with him going north of the river. And then Hugh Jones yesterday as well, slotted in at fullback for the first time, having not seen him there for a while, and got himself a couple of tries as well. So, yeah, they were my two.
Well,
mine could easily have been a Quinn. You got to mention earlier, but Danny Kerr had a very, very busy Sunday where he scored a try, got his 5th yellow card of the season to equal a record, which is incredible for a scrum half, I think, and then appeared on our TV screens as well. But
has anyone watched that? I've not seen that yet. Was that any good?
No, I've taped it.
Yeah, I haven't quite got around to that yet. But I'm actually going to go for another scrum half who I hope it's not, but his England career might be over. It feels like it at the moment, but Dan Robson, just a delightful little cameo for Wasps. And in Lawrence's absence, it feels like we need a bit of Wasps chat here. He scored an unbelievable drop goal, which is kind of in keeping with it. I think that's going to be a bit of a trend, I think, from goal line dropouts. And he just knocked it over from sort of 45 meters, and just played really nicely to get Wasps that win over Gloucester. So I'm going to go Dan Robson. I think he's been a bit underused by Eddie Jones over the last 7 or 8 years and deserves a bit more credit.
I'll go for Ben Earl, who got man of the match on Friday night. And the reason was it was the most physical, traditional purist. If you we talked about the South Africans, if you're a South African that literally trying to run over the top of each other, apart from him, who mixed a little bit of that when needed to score his try, just weighed up that he was going to get over the line, but he combined it with some brilliant footwork, which was the difference, and made a couple of really good breaks in the game. And as an attacking back row runner, there aren't many better in the Premiership. I thought he had a really good game on Friday night.
Well, it just reminded me, we didn't even speak about Gloucester and Wasps, did we? In that run-up. That's terrible. And we need to speak actually about Gloucester Wasps at Kingsholm. The Wasps win. Was anyone expecting that at Kingsholm, given that Gloucester have been looking so good recently?
No, but having said that, Wasps have, with a lot of their bodies back, have started looking much more like themselves. I don't think there's a team. We've mentioned all through that everyone gets injuries, but I don't think there's a team that had as many injuries or as big a percentage of their salary cap injured, if you like, because, no Fekitoa, no Barbary, no Launchbury, no Willis. These are all their big game changers, and they've come back and they've started, much higher percentage of wins since then. But I didn't expect that because, it was at Kingsholm in particular, and how Gloucester have been playing. And probably the most important moment, undoubtedly, was the last play of the game when, we all thought, here we go, Gloucester are going to get one of their driving mauls over the line. And was it Fafita who stole the ball, and they kicked it out? And, that was a huge, huge steal. But what a performance from Wasps to go away to Kingsholm and do that.
Absolutely, and it could be a significant loss for the Cherry and Whites. That could be the one that will be kicking themselves for at the end of the season, Michael.
Yeah, I think so. I've been down to Gloucester this year as well, and they seem to have had a bit of a resurgence in some of their play over the last couple of years, where they've been sort of at the foot of the table. But yeah, they've been playing some brilliant rugby. I love just watching them play. And I know they've got that sort of new 4G surface, but they seem to play with a little bit more pace. And when the shed gets going, it was a pretty intimidating place to be down there, and especially with the likes of Reece Zammit, and then mix them with Premiership stalwarts like Billy 12 Trees and Ackermans. They're a good side.
Okay, should we get some? We move on then. Move on from the Premiership, and we'll talk about the Women's Six Nations, because that's been in full swing. And we've had some fantastic wins for Wales, France, and England over the weekend. Will, and you've been across that for us?
Yeah, after 2 rounds, there's 3 teams who are 2 from 2 and 3 teams who are none from 2. Obviously, that's going to change this coming weekend with the 3rd round. But it was kind of another The two games followed the very much expected path, with France beating Ireland pretty comfortably and England very, very comfortably beating Wales at 74-0. They made 11 changes, England. Simon Middleton's trying to kind of look at his depth and get a sense of quite how deep his squad is, but they still managed to score 12 tries, 5 of them from the wings. They looked in pretty good nick over in Italy. The outstanding game, though, I suppose, was at the Arms Park in Cardiff, where they got a record crowd for Wales versus Scotland. Wales got their first home win in 3 years, but it didn't feel like that for was going to happen for most of the game. Scotland were 19-7 up, quite deep into the game. Ronan Lloyd scored twice, but with 5 minutes to go, Wales got their 4th try, so they secured a bonus point, and then they won a turnover with the clock in the red to pinch the win. So yeah, that was a bit of a classic. And as I said, record crowd down there. There was another amazing crowd in France as well. It just feels to me like the Women's Six Nations has gone to another level this year. Big sponsor in TikTok, different time of the year. It feels it's out of the men's competition shadow, and it's kind of being watched and followed in its own right a little bit more than it maybe ever has been before. And that's very, very good to see.
Yeah, I think that generally makes a massive difference to be playing it at a different time to the men's competition, and it's just great, isn't it, to see the growth and the interest and the excitement surrounding like the women's game and the Six Nations this season. Ben?
Yeah, the only thing I'd say, Sarra, I don't want to be negative at all because it's been brilliant, but
and don't.
No. This is a positive. Okay. The unions that haven't invested as quickly, and I know the RFU are richer and things, but they have to accelerate their investment in the women's game, because the great thing about the Six Nations has always been the jeopardy in it. And at the moment, yeah, England haven't lost a game for they've lost 1 game in the last 5 championships. And the breadth of score, we need those unions that were a little bit late to the party to really accelerate that now, because it'll take a while for that pathway of professionalism to filter in and really start making a difference. But England and France that are only going to keep getting better, I think. I looked at that England performance and you said 5 tries from the wing. A load of it was down. What we were just talking about with Exeter, England's pack are scary. I think, Lewis Deacon's done a fantastic job with it, that they tie in so many bodies to try and stop the drive. They got driving mauls themselves, but if you go too hard to try and stop it, they're really good at getting out and finding that space that's been created. And they just look such a well-oiled machine. You can't at the moment see many people stopping them. And to get that real excitement where we're turning up to the games going, I hope my team win, or England fans are turning up really nervous about the outcome. That will take the tournament to a whole new level. But it's going to take the bigwigs in the unions to really invest behind it, because there's clearly now an audience developing. And what I've loved is, the women's game has stopped trying to talk to people that are never going to be interested in women's rugby, because that's in the back. They've got a prejudice to it, and they've created their own audience, which are turning up in droves to watch the game. I bet the majority of those haven't turned up to watch the men's championship and things. And the atmosphere within the stadiums is becoming a brilliant day out. They just need that jeopardy in the tournament itself, where it's a nail biter every game. I mean, you saw the reactions of all the players and the fans after Wales nicked that game at the end with the turnover, and that is what rugby is all about. And that's why I just hope that they see the benefits, they see the crowd starting to come in their droves, and they back it now fully.
Yeah, I think the changes are starting to happen now in Wales. I mean, like a dozen or so of this Welsh current squad have had pro contract, so it is happening, but maybe it's just not happening quick enough.
Well, that's all my point was, that it's brilliant that they're doing it. Let's not sort of try and belittle what the unions have done, but that they missed the train. So England now looks such a professional outfit. You're going to have to go even harder to catch them up, because England aren't going to stop getting better. They're going to continually try and push the envelope, and that's why there needs to be everyone behind Scottish rugby, Welsh rugby, Irish rugby, getting behind their team and making sure that they can catch up.
Yeah, 10 Quins, I think, in the England women's squad. You had any of them on the pods, Michael?
Yeah, Sarah Beckett, Shauna Brown have both been on. We've had Jess Breach as well. We also spoke to Berth a while ago. But in terms of the sort of TikTok stuff, as a secondary school teacher, I spend most of my job trying to keep kids off TikTok in the classroom. But if there's women's rugby content on there, then I'm free reign, go for your life, go and get as much of it as you can. So yeah, I'm all for that.
If I was a teenager now, I would be all over TikTok.
So I try and use it as an educational tool. I mean, I'm in my mid-20s now, and I'm on TikTok just to make sure I've got something to talk to them about.
Of course you are.
So yeah, I'm not sitting there in my room doing dances with my housemate. I promise.
Well, I'm super looking forward though. Actually, the fixture for me, the next fixture in that Women's Six Nations is England Wales, isn't it, in Gloucester? That's Wales. Yes, they won on the weekend, but they're going to have to do something pretty special to beat this England side, as Ben said.
Yeah, and it's the 2 wins under their belt. Wales are kind of they're punching above their weight. I think even with that investment that's come pretty recently. Ben's exactly right. England aren't going to suddenly get worse now. The rest are going to have to catch up with them. They're not going to drop back into the chasing pack. So amazing test for Wales this weekend. That's kind of a bit of a barometer. I don't expect them to win in Gloucester, but we'll see. For England, it's all about kind of building towards that game on the final weekend against France, which every year is their kind of their barometer game, I suppose. But yeah, big test for Wales, and they can prove that even in defeat, they can prove this weekend that they are making proper strides.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So it's time now to find out a bit more about our featured club podcast. Michael, all eyes, ears are on you. Now it's called 2 Words, 4 Quarters, a Harlequins podcast. As I mentioned earlier, it's now an award-winning podcast. So maybe we should curtsy or bow. I don't know. It was a pretty impressive win for you last week. That must be really exciting. Just tell us, though, a little bit more about the podcast itself.
So it's me and my cousin Will. Our grandfather played for Quins post-war in the 1950s. So it's sort of been in and around the sort of family and the blood for a while. My dad was a bit more Brighton Hove Albion than Harlequins when we were growing up, but he's back on the bandwagon over the last couple of years. Will text me, when was it, sort of January time of last year. We're bored, sat in the house doing nothing in lockdown. He's like, mate, I'm bored out of my mind. We're still watching the games every weekend. Do you want to just jump on the Zoom call and see if we can record something? And I was like, look, I've got nothing else going on. Let's give it a go. And I'm really lucky that Will's job is in social media for Adidas. So he's a bit of a whiz on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, which obviously massively helps us do what we do. So yeah, it's been a bit of a mental sort of couple of years, especially then when we ended up going to the final last year together, even though there were only 10,000 in there. That was quite a cool moment for us both. And then this year we just sort of keep going, and it's nice being back in the stands properly and talking to people. And then, we've got a couple of European big away days next weekend as well, which I'm looking forward to. But yeah, it's come out of nowhere really, this whole sort of storm of it, and we probably picked up at the right time because Guzzy left, and then we sort of jumped on, even though we planned it beforehand. So we sort of had this perfect storm, and then 14 a bit months later, here we are with an award somewhere.
An award where you beat Man U's podcast.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, Man United. Who else was there? There was Boston Celtics, New England Patriots, and a couple of others from the American sporting world. It was quite funny though because they were advertising the winners on 2 billboards in the UK for a couple of hours on the Friday, sorry. And one was in Liverpool, which is a little bit too far for me, but one was on Chiswick Roundabout, which is only about 40 yards from where I work. So I thought, well, I'm free. I better go down. It wasn't exactly Times Square, but we'll take it.
Did you go round and round and round?
I was stood there on FaceTime for about 20 minutes looking up at this sort of rusty billboard going, it better come up at some stage, otherwise I've wasted my Friday. And I'm going to stick him in it. He was actually on a first date. And I said, mate, I've got to get you on the phone. We can't miss this. And she was... How did
it go?
I don't think well. If he was on the FaceTime for me for 15 minutes, I don't think it was brilliant. But no, that was good. And then, we had a bit of celebration last night as well, which was fun.
Good to hear, because you obviously cover your views on the game and Harlequins, but we also get a bit of an insight into your social lives as well from talking to you for the last 20 minutes. I'd say that'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, the social stuff we have to keep a little bit PG at times. Will lives a bit more of a high rolling lifestyle than me. He's away in high shoots and Adidas HQ, and I'm teaching year nines on a Monday morning. So it's two ends of the spectrum in terms of glamour, but then we mix it in the soup on a Saturday afternoon and we get stuck into it. But yeah, no, we do all sorts. So whatever's going on in the club, and we're really lucky that Quins have got a really brilliant CEO that keeps clubs really engaged. I don't know if any of you met Laurie Dalrymple, but he does such a brilliant job in engaging fans. So we're really lucky that a lot of the chat we get, rather than having to sort of go digging for it, it's all out there and we just give our opinion. And somehow there's a few people that listen to our drivel on a Monday morning at 6 o'clock on their commute to work.
What's been the highlight during your time of making the podcast?
We had Brownie on a couple of weeks ago. And even I was a little bit embarrassed to say that even as a sort of 10, 12-year-old, probably he was a bit embarrassed showing his age, but I had photos of him on my bedroom wall growing up. So having him on was great. And when he went to Newcastle, I thought we wouldn't get him. And then, we had some chat with him, and he came on and actually sent us a shirt as well, which I've got to put in a frame as well. So yeah, having him on was pretty cool. We spoke to Chris Robshaw, but then probably the highlight off microphone was sitting in the banks of the stoop at 2 a.m, drinking the club's Peroni and eating their paella while all the boys are getting filled in down the patch, and we were just absolutely loving it. It was a pretty surreal day, that final day.
Okay, well, I think it's now time, is it, for you to test our rugby knowledge?
That is correct. Thanks, Sarah. So basically, it's our rugby game of true or false, rugby trivia. Lawrence normally gets this wrong, and he's not here to get it wrong. So I'll be intrigued to see which of you guys messes this up. But I'm going to give you a random piece of rugby trivia, and you have to decide whether you think it's true and over the line or false, and therefore in the bin. There's no prizes. We're just playing for Lawrence's respect.
What?
There are no prizes.
Yeah, non-existent award for this. Today's bit of rugby trivia is, and Michael might have a bit of insight into this because he mentioned this person earlier, but the Harlequins prop Shauna Brown scored her first try for England at the weekend in their massive win over Italy. But rugby is not the first sport where she's represented her country. She's also previously represented England at shot put. Is that over the line or in the bin?
Over the line.
Over the line.
Over the line.
It's in fact in the bin.
Oh, it's a discus.
You've all been done.
Oh no, it was discus hammer throw, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
Hammer throw.
No. Oh, okay.
He took part in the 2014 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow.
I actually saw that interview.
Yeah.
Like literally about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, that's a shame. That was a big red herring. I thought you were just going to...
No. It was a shot put with a chain on it.
Yeah, Shauna the Hammer Brown. And she's had a very, very successful rugby career and scored her first try for England yesterday. So
that's pretty poor from me. I should have really known that. I knew that was a red flag.
At least we all got it wrong.
Yeah. I was just following your lead, Ben. I thought if Ben can do it, I know what I must stay on side.
Is that the one question?
That's the only question.
Oh, we cropped it up.
Yeah. I was looking for some more. Make one up. We'll make another one up on the spot. Okay, so we're all losers then.
Sarra Elgan was in a band before she was a TV presenter. Was it good or was it terrible?
And can you name any of the songs?
It was in the bin, by the way.
Rude. If I come on this podcast again, I would expecting you all to have done your research and listen to all one of our albums. Okay, thank you guys. That's all for this episode then. Thanks to Ben, Will and Michael. So the podcast now takes a break for a couple of weeks, but Lawrence, hopefully, will be returning for the last week of April to discuss round 23 of the Premiership. So do make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. But yeah, thanks for listening and thank you guys for your company. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, lol.